Okay, welcome back to another video on bot building for beginners. My name is Mark Littlemore. I'm making these videos for you to help you to build exciting bots that do interesting things. Today, we're going to talk a bit about geofencing. So what is geofencing? People might not know. It's a way of making your bot location based. What you do is you define a virtual perimeter for like a real world area, and then you can use it to determine from the user's location, which they share with you, where they are and whether it's within this location. So good examples of this would be like a delivery for a takeaway service or a restaurant, or maybe you need to restrict areas and don't allow people from outside a certain area to talk to the bot. Maybe you can make a game with this. Something else you could do is maybe make a tourist bot. So you define areas in a city, and when they're in there, your bot can tell you things about that. So today we're going to do it in two different ways. Firstly, if you're on the Facebook forums for Chatfuel, you may have seen Andrew Demeter helps you out by telling you to look at the geofencing documentation for Chatfuel. There's a really simple way, but it's not really that effective. It just defines a square region within which you can determine whether a user is in that location. But the second way is really great. It's something called fencer.io, and it allows you to define really complex areas. And I've got to shout out big thanks to FamRH on Facebook for pointing me at this service. Absolutely fantastic. It has an API, so I'm going to show you how to use that to define specific areas and then determine whether a user is inside that area or not. Okay, let's get started then. So the first thing we need to do is to share the user's location. So we're going to ask the user for the location. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a quick look at how geofencing works with Chatfuel. So there's some documentation on this if you want to read it. I've done mine in a similar way. The documentation is a little bit out of date, I think, with the way the go-to blocks work now. They're just slightly different. But if you read this, basically what we're going to do is we're going to use the share location plugin. So let's go to Chatfuel, and I'm going to build this for you. So here you go on Chatfuel dashboard. I've written some blocks already for this, but I'll show you how we're going to use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to determine if the user is within our delivery area. So imagine we're a takeaway. So we're going to ask for the user's location. So if you haven't used the share location block before, hopefully you've watched one of my other videos at which I show you how to use it. It's just within the Chatfuel plugins. You just add it here, share location. And then it asks for the user's location. And then it puts these various user parameters that we can use within our calculations. So what I'm going to do here is that I ask for the user's location, and then we say, how do you want to check if we deliver to you? This isn't something that you're going to need. This is just for me for testing. I'm going to check with Chatfuel, and I'm also going to check with the fencer.io API. So let's have a look at our Geofence Check with Chatfuel. Okay, I'm just going to show you how to build this now. So what we've got the latitude and longitude, which is your position within the world. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a go-to block. Okay, so the great thing about go-to blocks is that we can add filters to them, so we can filter on things like user parameters. And what we're going to do now is we're going to check the latitude and longitude of our user. Okay, so let's have a look at this map here. This is my position on the map. So this is the location that's going to get sent. This is my exact location, which at the moment is 53.344042 latitude, and the longitude is minus 2.574748. If you want to come and drop in for a cup of tea, come and say hello. That's where I live. So what we can do is we can take our latitude, which is the Y position within the world, up and down, and then we can take our longitude, which is the X position, and we can essentially define a box around the location that we want. So if you imagine this is where I deliver from, this is my house obviously, but imagine this is your takeaway. You can define a box around here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do a roughly, 5.344. If I do 5.380, so 380 is like quite far north from me. So imagine it's about there somewhere. And then we're going to do south. I'm going to do 53.330. So let's go down here, 50.330. It's here. So that's a rough area around there. And then for longitude, I'll do this way is minus 2.7. So that's all the way over here somewhere. Just to give us some sort of rounder numbers. 2.7 is over there. So it's quite a distance, I guess, to the east. And then likewise, I'll do minus 2.5, which is over here. Okay, so it's quite a large area. I mean, I guess you probably might not deliver in that sort of area. You might deliver in a sort of nearer area. Okay, so we're going to add some filters to our go-to block, and this is going to determine whether we can deliver or not. Okay, so we add a filter. So our first attribute is latitude. So we're going to check our latitude, and we're going to say, is it less than, yeah, and the calculation I said before was 53.380. And the next thing we're going to do is going to add another one. So what we want to say is our latitude between two numbers, okay? Now, one thing that I see on the Chatfuel forums, so we're going to say latitude here is greater than, and then we've got a number which is less than that, which is 53.330. Okay, so is it between 53.380, which is my northern position, but is it also greater than 53.330, which is my southern position? One thing I've seen people do wrong on the Facebook Chatfuel group is people here, they're doing this as an OR. We don't want this as an OR. That will say if any of the conditions pass, these are called conditionals, if any of those conditions pass, it will be true, and we don't want that. We want all of them. We need to say and this and that. So we want it to be less than 53.380 and greater than 53.330. Okay, so that's our latitude. We're going to add two more here for our longitude. So these are all checking the attributes that we've already set from our share location. So we can say, is it greater than, and what did I say before, minus 2.7. And also the last one, longitude, oops, yeah, longitude, there we go, is less than, minus 2.5. Now don't forget, for me, these are negative numbers here. So you're going to have to work out your maths here. You're going to have to do a little bit of maths. But this will be, is it between the positions here? So it's going to be up here, down there, over there, and I'm right in the middle. So hopefully this is going to pass. So what we're going to do is we're going to redirect to the block. So we're going to say Chatfuel, no, not Chatfuel. We're going to say Geofence. I've written some blocks there, delivery. So this is our, yes, we can deliver. Now the great thing here is we can use another go-to block. If this all passes, it will go to our delivery. So that says, yes, you can deliver. But if we add another block here, we can just say, by default, we can go to Geofence, what have we called it? No delivery. So we can say, if all of these conditions pass, we'll go to our delivery block. If not, we'll go to our no delivery. So if we look at our delivery block, I've got some text on here which says, yes, we can deliver to you. I'm also using the JSON API. I've written a little endpoint which gives me the Giphy GIFs, and I'm just going to use the chia there. So it's going to find me a random GIF. And finally, I've got a final go-to block here, which just takes me back to my original test. It just means we can test it over and over again. If we look at no delivery, very similar thing. We just tell the user, sorry, you're outside of our delivery area. We can't deliver to you. We give them a sad GIF, and then likewise, we go to our Geofence test again. Okay, so let's jump onto Facebook now and check Messenger. Okay, so Messenger, I've added to our AI. So I should have said this to our AI here. I've added a little delivery reel, which just goes to our Geofence test. At the moment, it's not part of my flows. Let's have a look at Messenger. Okay, so we type delivery. And then we'll have a look at our deliveries now. Okay, great. See if we can deliver to the area. Ask for the location. So the user will now send you the location into your bot. We send the location. Boom, location sent. Now, we're going to check with Chatfuel at the moment because we haven't written the Geofence API code. Now, hopefully, I've got my maths right. I've told us where I am. Let's have a look. Yes, we can deliver. All right, yeah, cool. We've got a great GIF there. Okay, if we change one of these values now, let's have a look at my delivery. Let's just change one of these values. What did my value say? It is minus 2.57. So if you say this is minus 2.6, so all of a sudden I'm outside of that area. We've made that area a little bit smaller. Let's try it again. We'll send the location. And we'll check with Chatfuel. Now hopefully this time we'll say no, we can't deliver because we're outside of the location. Okay, great stuff. Sadness, we can't be delivered to because we're not in the area. Right, so that's great, but that's only defined a square area around where I live. So let's use fencer.io, which is a great API for doing geofencing. Let's take a look at that now. Okay, so here we are. This is fencer.io. As I say, big shout out to FamRH on the Facebook Chatfuel group who pointed me at this service and wanted me to make this video. So if you want me to make any videos, hit me up on Facebook or Messenger and we can we can talk about some videos that I'll make for you. Okay, so this is great. This helps you to define a really complex area for your geofence. And this would be great for delivery. So if you don't deliver to certain areas for whatever reason, you can define a really complex area. And it has an absolutely fantastic API. So let's have a look here. This is a RESTful API. The one thing you want here is position inside. Let's have a look. So this defines, let me just zoom in a little bit. This defines, when I find it, there we go, it defines a position within inside your geofence that you define. Okay, so I've already signed up for an account. If you just sign up for an account, there's 5 public geofences for free. You'll have to pay if you want private ones, but for the purposes of this video, I don't need that. If you have a look in settings, we've now got an API key. I've obviously hidden my API key from you here. Don't share your API keys, as I always tell you. We're going to use this to use the API. Let's have a look at our geofences here. So here's one I've defined earlier. Okay, so let's have a look. I'll just zoom out a little bit. Okay, there's where I live on the map, and this is an area. So as you can see, I've done sort of slightly more complex area. Okay, we could just make it square like this. This is fine. But what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to say I'm outside of the area or I'm inside the area. Okay, so at the moment I'll put me inside the area. I'll save this. Okay, all you have to do is just for each new point that you define, you can just, it gives you another point. You can just make something a bit more complex like that. Okay, so this is going to define our delivery area. We'll save this. Okay, here you can see there's an access key. This is per geofence. You're going to get an access key, and you're going to use this in your API request. As you can see here, it expects some headers. It's the authorization, which is our API key, a lat position, which is latitude coordinates, the long position, LNG position, which is longitude coordinate, and then we're going to hit this position inside with our access key, which is our geofence. Okay, so let's look at the code we started writing before. This is on glitch. Here's our joke and the weather things that we've done previously. If you want to look at any of the other previous videos, they should be on YouTube, and this will give you how we've done all these previous examples. One thing I should remind you is make sure you've got request and request promise for this node server. And what we're going to do is, the first thing we need to do is we need to take our API key and put it into our environment variables. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do fencer API key equals, and then I'm going to put in my API key. Again, I'm not sharing this with you. So we can now take that from the process environment variables. Okay, so we're going to write a new get endpoint. So we're going to do app.get. We're going to make a get request to it. We're going to call it geofence. Okay. As always, it's going to give us a request, and we're going to give it a response. This is our function here. Okay. So one thing that I think it was Marcus said to me online, he said, write some comments here. So sorry if I haven't written comments before. So what we're going to do is, if you do // this is a comment in JavaScript. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get our fencer.io API key. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get the latitude, longitude, and access key. We're going to pass those to our request from Chatfuel. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our request options using the data given. Next thing we're going to do is make our request. And then we're going to, once we've made our request, we're going to determine if the user is inside the area. And lastly, we're going to respond with JSON to Chatfuel. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set something up in Chatfuel now, a block. Okay, so here's one I made earlier, and we called it Geofence Check with API. So if you remember my test earlier, I said, how do we want to check this share location? Okay, so we're going to check with the API. So what I'm going to do is something a little bit clever now. I'm not going to respond with any data from the API that we're about to write, the API endpoint. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to set an attribute so we can then use it within Chatfuel. And this is where which will give you really sort of complex behaviors within your Chatfuel bot. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a user variable. Okay, I've done this before, so it's called user is in area, and I'm going to set this to false. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to define a variable called user is in area, and if it's set to true, then we can say yes, we can deliver. If it's still set to false after we made our API request, then we can't deliver. Okay. So what we're going to do here, we're going to add in. So I've displayed the latitude and longitude again. So let's go add JSON API here. Okay. So we've got our endpoint. It's called Geofence. If you remember, we've called it. This is called right tongue, which is a silly name. We're going to do Geofence, and this is the name of the endpoint. At the moment, it won't do anything. It'll actually, we've not done any response whatsoever. But this is what we'd actually call. So let's have a look in our dashboard. We're going to hit that there, and we're going to pass through some what we call query parameters. If you've seen any of the previous videos, we've done this before. So we're going to do latitude, if I can spell it, and we're going to pass latitude. Okay. We're going to do an ampersand, longitude, and we're going to pass the user's longitude. Okay, great. So we need those. And the last thing is, if you remember when we look at our account, we've got this access key for this area we've defined. We're going to take this access key here, we can copy it, and we're going to paste this in here, and we're going to call it access key. And we're going to paste that in, and it's just that defines the area. So if you're writing it multiple areas, you'd have different access keys for each of the geofences. That's going to be passed to our API now. Okay, great. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to take our API key. Okay, so we're going to get our API key from our environment variables we've set in there. So we'll call it API key equals process.env. And we called it Fence API key. Okay. Next thing we want to do is we want to get the latitude and longitude and access key from our request. So remember, we've done it previously up here. We've done it like this: latitude equals request.query.latitude. I'm going to show you a slightly different way. And we can do what's called destructuring within JavaScript, like modern JavaScript. So what we're going to do is we're going to do latitude, longitude, and we're going to tell access key equals request.query. So what this does is query is a JavaScript object, and it's just going to take all of these properties out of it. It's exactly the same as saying const latitude equals request.query.latitude, and so on for all of these different things. But we can just do it in a really simple way. That's going to take our latitude, longitude, and access key. Okay, so as we've done previously, we need to set up some options for our request. So we'll call it fencer options, and this is a JavaScript object again. Okay, so for each of these properties, we need a URL. Okay, for the developers, let's have a look here. api.fencer.io/v1.0/position/inside. Okay, so that's the URL we're going to use. I'm going to copy that. Let's go to our code. So we need what's called a URI when we make a request. So what I'm going to do here is use a template string. So we've got our API here, and then we need to pass the access key. So we can do $ curly brackets access key. So the access key we got from our request, it's going to be passed in here as per the instructions in the developer documentation for this API. Okay, the next thing it says we need, let's have a look at documentation. It says we need headers. So we're going to send some request headers, which is the API key as authorization, lat-pos, and lng-pos. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to have an object called headers, and this is the standard for doing this with the request library that we're going to use. We're going to have authorization, the American spelling there, and we're going to use the API key from our environment variables from the process. So two things here we need lat-pos. Now the reason I've done those in single quotes there is dash, for most things for a property in JavaScript, we can't actually use the dash there, so we just need to make it a string instead, and it does the same thing. Latitude, so that latitude comes from our request. Likewise, we have lng-pos, and that's our longitude, if I can spell it. The last thing we want to do is we want to say, yes, parse the JSON. We've done this before. If we set this to true, it's just going to parse the JSON for us so we have a JavaScript object which is returned. Now we're going to use request promise again. Okay, and if we look at the top, if you remember, we have imported it here. We've used require, and we brought in request promise, which is our library for making HTTP requests. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass those options to this. So this makes a request. We're using JavaScript promises, so we're going to get some data back. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you'll know how this works. This is our fencer data. And if we look at the documentation, it's going to give us a response like this with data and a property called inside. And this inside is going to be true or false. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to determine if the user is inside this area. Okay, so let's get a variable for us called const is user inside area. So this is just going to be from the data we've been given. We get fencer data. It returns us something called data, and the property inside that is inside, and that will be true or false. Okay, great. So we can send that back to Chatfuel. Now respond, which I could spell. So as I said before, the clever thing we're going to do here is we're going to set up this user is in area user attribute. Okay, so let's have a look. So how do we do that in Chatfuel? We do, let's just set up our output data. Oops, output data. So if we just, normally we do messages and we do an array and we'd set up some message here, which is like text. Hello, that would be some text saying hello. This time we're not going to do that. We're going to set up an attribute instead. So we see set underscore attributes, which is what Chatfuel expects. And the user attribute we're going to set is user is in area. So you need to make sure that this matches what you've said here, user is in area. We set it to false, and then we're going to set it to whatever the API returns us. And here we've set this variable, so it's is user inside area. Okay, and this is our data, and then we just need to respond. So we do response .json and our output data. Okay, great. So let's make our request then. Okay, so right tongue.glitch.me/geofence, which is our API within Glitch. Okay, so this is going to set up this user attribute. So how do we respond to it? We're going to create two blocks here. Okay, I'm going to add a filter in like we did with the Chatfuel version. So we're going to do user is in area. So if the value is true, yeah, then we can go back to, do you remember we did our delivery and our no delivery blocks? We can just go to our delivery. So we go delivery, so geofence delivery, yeah. Otherwise we fall back. Again, like we said, so if the user is in area is false, okay, then we do the no delivery and geofence delivery. So this is great. This is really simple now. Set an attribute to false because we always need to initialize it to something. So we just assume they're not in the area. We call our API. Our API calls fencer. It asks if the latitude and longitude that we've given are within the area. And then we go to the block that we can deliver if we set this to true. Otherwise, we fall back to no delivery. So let's just try this out in Messenger again. Okay, we'll send our location. Okay, sending my location again. I've hooked this up with the Fencer API. So let's choose that. And let's check. My latitude and longitude again, still the same. Hopefully. It's checking. Yes, we can deliver to you. Yeah, party. Okay. So let's have a look. We're going to alter this now. Okay. So if you can see, there's the green spot is where I am. Let's take this above me. Okay. So if you have a look, all of a sudden you can't deliver to my area. I don't know why, but I live in a bad neighborhood and you can't deliver your food to me, or it's just an area that's too far away. Okay. So now I'm outside of it. So if we save this, it should have updated. So let's run it again. We'll send our location. My location is obviously still the same. I've not moved anywhere. And we're going to check with the Fencer API. Now this time, it should say, no, we can't deliver to you. Okay, sorry, you're outside the delivery area. Totally depressed. I'm not totally depressed. It's okay. We'll be okay. So great. Our API has told us whether we're inside or outside the area using the Fencer API. Now, if you have a delivery service, this is an absolute game changer for you. Use this API, absolutely fantastic. And thanks, as I say, to FamRH for pointing this out. This is going to change the way you do location-based bots. Okay, so that's the end of this video. Hope it's been really useful. If you can sign up for my mailing list, the URL is below. If you want to ask any questions, and I've got a little form here, if you can fill in the questions and help me to determine what videos to do next, ask me, just hit me up on Twitter is the best way, or Facebook. I'm always on both of those. My email address is there as well. You'll find me on the Chatfuel forums, the groups on Facebook. Ask me, tell me what videos you want. I might well add a Trello board or something like that so you can vote up and down what we're going to do next. I'll see you next time for another video on bot building for beginners.